Well, I'm not sure they kept their sanity. No, I'm kidding. I don't recommend having 13 children. Anybody who's contemplating it, I don't recommend it. You have to regulate to relate. If the nervous system is so activated, it can sabotage your desire to do what you know would be best for you to do. We so much want somebody to come and rescue us without realizing that we are the ones to need to rescue ourselves. We're the ones that can soothe ourselves.
Welcome back to A Normal Family. I'm Anna Wallace, and today I'm talking to family therapist Anita Sommers, the youngest of 13 children. Yes, 13. In a moment, you'll hear Anita explain what it was like growing up inside such a big, chaotic family. We also talked about how intergenerational trauma shaped her parents, the power of the stories we tell ourselves, and how they shape us and our attachment styles. I found this conversation really illuminating. What a joy to sit down and explore these themes with a systemic family therapist. How our nervous system is wired in childhood and how we can self-soothe. Her advice and practical ideas keep going round in my head. And stay tuned to the end to hear what she has to say about the impact of birth order on your personality. If you want to lead better relationships in your life, this episode is for you. And I hope you take as much from it as I did. Good afternoon, Anita.
Good afternoon. Good to
How are
see
you? Nice to see you too. Now, normally I start by asking my guests where they are in the world, but today we're both in a very rainy Lisbon.
Yes.
And some miles away from where you grew up in Wisconsin in the Midwest of America. We're talking today because you had an interesting upbringing as the youngest of 13 children. So why don't you start by painting a picture of what life was like as one of 13?
Yeah. Well, my parents, it was kind of crazy. They had 13 children in 14 years. I had 8 sisters and 4 brothers. So like at school, we were in every single year. And so teachers definitely knew who we were. I remember saying, oh, you're a Sommers. That means you're going to be late for school and you run slow. Which both is very true. You always had playmates, which was nice because if certain years at school were a bit rough, you could always know that you could go home and have people to talk to and play with. There was a nice security to that. But there was also a lot of chaos that comes with 13
I'm
kids.
sure.
My dad was a night owl and he would wake us up in the middle of the night because there was a big grocery store that at nighttime few people were there. And I thought it was really exciting. It was like an adventure. And he'd wake up with like 2 or 3 of us and we'd go out grocery shopping. And we used to fill 3 trolleys.
I was going to ask how many trolleys of food.
Quite a production. I remember the store clerk always saying, "Oh God, this is going to last you a long time." And then she would see us a week later coming.
How long that's how long 3 trolleys lasted, a week.
Yes. The amount of food was crazy. We had 2 big refrigerators. And then we got home, everyone had a role and they would swing into like putting things away. And yeah, it was quite a system, but.
So a good team as well as a good family.
Yes, yeah, definitely a good team. But it was wild too. Like I can't imagine now that I have 2 children and I often think about my parents and I just think, wow, how did they do it? How did they keep their sanity and their logistically, financially?
And have you come up with an answer to that?
Well, I'm not sure they kept their sanity. No, we probably drove them to an early grave, but I don't recommend having 13 children. And anybody who's contemplating it, I don't recommend it. But there were also dynamics that were beyond our big family that made it to be a unique kind of growing up experience as well.
Okay. Well, perhaps I'll come to those, but let me just stick with the theme of being a big family. Your teacher already knew your 12 siblings, and I can imagine that a family that size was already a very established unit by the time that you came along.
Yeah.
So how do you find your way in a family like that as the youngest of 13?
One thing was quite tricky was there was definitely a hierarchy. Even if like you got into the car, if somebody was older than you, they would get the front seat and you would have to be in the back seat. I think all youngest have this to a point, but like having a voice, feeling like you have to be louder to get your voice to be heard. being seen. I had a bit of a weird duality in which I was both overfunctioned for and kind of neglected as well.
Okay.
So I had so many siblings that were doing so many things for me, picking me up, playing with me, like if I reached for something, getting it for me. But then there was this part where the first four oldest are girls, and they were great older sisters, but they were young, and they were 12, 13, 14, and they did a lot of my childcare. So sometimes I think I was forgotten in the crib. I don't think it was consistent because my mom worked as a nurse and my dad also worked. And so I had this weird, strange thing of being kind of like spoiled or overfunctioned for
Mm.
and neglected. I
Mm.
think I can see how it plays out in my life
Okay.
over the years.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is that there were lots of people around, but with that shared responsibility meant that sometimes you could slip through the gaps
Yeah.
as much as be overserviced.
Yes, exactly. So, and it's a weird, yeah, weird juxtaposition.
Right.
I would say this though, my dad did a really good job of trying to bring out our uniqueness. He
Okay.
tried to find something about you that was different from the other kids. At a young age, I didn't really like sweets. And I think my dad in his mind thought, okay, she's the healthy one. And my sister who was a year older. She loved sweets. So he would like go and buy her cookies. And then I remember when I was in high school on Christmas, he went into a health food store and got soy milk and he wrapped it up as a gift. And I was in high school and I was like, people were like, what did you get for Christmas? But it's very sweet that he had got what he thought was like health food. But he tried to recognize like your uniqueness in this big family, which
Yeah.
we appreciate.
So you alluded to other reasons that it was a unique family environment. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, my dad was larger than life in his personality. He was a big man. He looked a lot like Marlon Brando, but the older Marlon Brando. And he was a bit like the godfather in our family. And he had big ideas for us and sometimes grandiose ideas. I think he wanted us to be like the Kennedys without the prestige or money. He really was into us trying to make the world a better place. A sister who was a doctor and she worked in Africa for a long time. I have a brother who was a public defendant. It is a family culture that, our role is to make the world a better place,
Mm,
which I do really value. But he
mm.
also, his moods weren't always contained. He did crazy things. He was always thinking outside the box, which was great, but sometimes it was pretty wild. Outdoorsy skills, he wore three-piece suits, actually. My dad loved fashion and he wore fedora hats and matching three-piece suits.
Okay. I'm building an slightly eccentric image.
Yes. But he had a hard time saying he was sorry. He was very prideful, and we grew up Catholic, hence the big family. And he often used religion to, I think, control us because you can't argue with God. If God is right, it's a great way to manipulate.
So you could see that it was a bit of a ruse even as a young girl.
Yes, but he didn't play by the rules. Like there was a lot of feeling that you can do anything, anything is
Mhm.
possible. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
What do you know about your own parents' upbringing? Did they themselves come from big families? I'm just trying to get inside the motivations of a couple
Yeah.
that want to have 13 children within 14 years.
Oh yeah, they were one of seven, fairly big families. And then I realized when I got older, there was a lot of intergenerational trauma as well.
Mm,
Her mom was 27 years old when my mom was born, and my mom was the youngest of seven children. In the same year, my mom's dad died of a ruptured appendix. So my mom was a
mm.
baby, and her mom was a widow of
Of
seven
seven.
children at the age of 27, which is crazy to
Wow.
me. Children sort of know when the system can handle a lot
Mhm,
and learn to
mhm.
suppress their own needs. My mom was the most self sacrificing woman to such a fault.
Mm.
She never complained, even having, though she worked full time, had 13 kids in 14 years.
Extraordinary.
My dad lived half the year when I was age of 7 in a different city. So she raised us for half the year, but she never complained. She dedicated so much to her family and to her relationship that she really lost herself. And so I feel very strongly about the importance of keeping up your own personal garden, your own eye garden. But my dad came from his own trauma. His dad died suddenly when he was 8 years old. He died from liver failure after spraying his house with this like bug repellent.
Yeah.
And his mom was always very sickly and died when he was 18. He was from a very poor family, so he had a lot of trauma. I think there's why that created some of his narcissistic tendencies. So I think there was definitely a trauma bond with them. I think there was love. They were very connected. They died within the same year of each other, 2 months apart. But unfortunately, their trauma also leaked out as well.
Yeah. So looking back, how do you reflect upon your relationship with your parents now?
I mean, it's been a journey. I'm 54 years old, so, it's been a journey. I think when you get to the point and you realize my parents are doing the best they can with the cards that they were given,
Yeah.
I think really helps. And you see them as people instead of your parents that have let you down in so many different ways or not showed up the way you wanted to. And you realize they didn't often get it themselves. How can you give something that you never got? So I have empathy for their position. And I also hold that sometimes it wasn't good enough. And I have empathy for myself. I think a lot of people worry that if they talk about what they didn't get, they're blaming their parents, or they get stuck and they're blaming their parents and not being able to see their parents' own struggle. So I think holding two things can be right at the same time has really helped.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that point. There's a big part of the philosophy at Normal Family here about trying to recognize parents or people just as humans that are trying to do their best.
Yeah. And I do believe that. I did. And I think
Yeah.
they did better than their parents. That's the
Yeah.
reality.
Yes.
They did do better. Was it always enough? No.
Yeah.
Did it have some gaps? Sure. But they were trying the best with what they were given. Yeah. And I think, God, just keeping 13 kids alive, like,
I mean, could you even afford to have 13 children in today's world?
yes. And my siblings, they come with their quirks and funniness, but they're cool people. They are loving people. They have good relationships. So, I mean, my parents did something right,
Yeah.
Was there some struggles for them? Sure. But there's a lot that they did well.
When there's 13 of you, do you all keep in touch or do you inevitably have different relationships with each other?
What shaped me is that with a big family, you have three families in one. Every fifth kid, this is a thing in psychology, fifth kid becomes a new oldest. And that was true of our family. In fact, I was sitting at my dad's funeral and I remember three people asked to speak at his funeral. Usually the oldest sides with the parent most in power.
Okay.
And I would say my dad had more power in the family. And the three people who asked to speak at his funeral fit every fifth person. But we kind of knew that there was three families. There was like the oldest, there's the middle kids, and the last five, we were sort of our own system. And with that, you have stronger relationships with different siblings. You're part of the whole.
The subunits within the unit.
Yes.
Right.
Which is different than a lot
Interesting.
of families. And there's different
Yeah.
roles that people play within those subunits. And then they play a role in their bigger system.
Okay.
So observing systems, understanding systems came really natural to me because I was living it from a very young age.
Let's move on then to talk about your professional world. You're a family therapist, Anita, but that doesn't mean that you deal just with families. So can you help the listeners understand what type of people arrive in your office and what brings them there in the first place?
Yeah, I'm a systemic family therapy, but you're absolutely right. Systemic family therapists work with individuals, they work with couples, and they work with families. I do a lot of work with couples because it's all a relationship. So it's looking at the dynamics, the dance between people. And so as a systemic family therapist, you may be looking at the system, the hierarchy, the roles that people are playing. If somebody does one thing in the dance, how does that produce a reaction?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you think about diagnosis, and we think of the body as a system, how the systems around you are affecting your well-being. So how your family, how your relationships, how your job, how your culture, how the larger system is all affecting your well-being. I think Esther Perel said, the quality of your life is based on the quality of your relationships.
I think I saw on your website that you deal with family origin stories. Is that right?
Yeah. So looking at how our early experiences, they're sort of our first school, how we feel safe. Do we feel heard? Do we feel we have a voice? How our nervous system is shaped, and that's around safety. How do we handle conflict? How we see ourselves? What fears we have. So with my clients, I always go back and think about those early experiences. And in the couple relationship, I would say it's your hardest because it's most connected to your caregivers. So those things come up more acutely, like, do I have a voice? Do I feel safe? Do I feel heard? Do I feel like you're attuned? When I knock, are you going to be emotionally available?
Is it an oversimplification to say that we're attracted to our mums/dads?
It's definitely plays a role, but it is a simplification because you can also do what we call a corrective script. I would say I did this in my first relationship. You can correct it. So if you think of like, okay, what are the parts of a parent that you didn't like subconsciously? And then you pick somebody who's the complete opposite. But the corrective script can lead to different types of problems by correcting. You see this with parents a lot. Let's say their parent was unavailable, then they become super available to their child, but to the point sometimes where they're over functioning for a child.
Right.
Or you do what we call a replica script, which is what you're talking about. We repeat that pattern. If we had a parent that was unavailable, we learn that love has to be earned, then what we do is pick, partners in which we have to work hard for that relationship.
Okay.
Because we subconsciously think, oh, if I can make you love me, I'm healing my relationship with my dad or mom.
Okay.
So that's what we call a replica script.
So we're talking a lot about scripts, and I'm fascinated by the idea of family narrative. Why do we have them in the first place? What does psychology have to say about why we have scripts?
Well, as a child, and this is part of the therapy too, you form your scripts and you form your story. Mom treated me this way because I wasn't good enough. I was damaged. I wasn't lovable,
Okay.
Without knowing it, people are holding that script. So part of the work is, okay, recognizing, oh, what is the story we tell ourselves? Is there another story that we're not telling ourselves? And thinking about it from the adult mind, because we can form a lot of scripts in childhood. They're just subconscious ways in which we make sense of the world, but they're not always accurate. Often they aren't accurate, There could be a story that as soon as somebody loves me, they're going to leave me. And then you reenact that, even solidified that story.
And that there are some really helpful examples to help people understand, like, I wasn't loved because I wasn't good enough, or if I behave this way, somebody might leave me.
Yeah.
And so those are really helpful, practical examples of the script that people might hear running in their own minds.
Yeah.
So I guess the first step for anybody listening is to get curious or just observe what that script is that they are repeating.
Yeah.
And then how might they start to expand that script or reframe it?
Well, I do want to clarify one thing that becomes
Please.
super important is if it was just a matter of changing the script, which is more our cognitive brain, it's going to be difficult. Often people know what to do. That's not what's stopping them. It's our nervous system that drives us to act in ways even though we know what we should do or what would be more helpful. Anxious attachment, and I would say I definitely lean toward anxious attachment. I learned to manage it, but it's there, is a good example of that. So anxious attachment, often people get nervous, let's say when there's a fight or when the fear of abandonment gets activated. You might do things like people pleasing, or I need to placate, or I need to fix this right away. And sometimes you end up abandoning yourself, or you don't hold to your own boundaries because your nervous system it's activated. It's saying, I'm in danger here. I'm in danger. Okay. I don't like flying. And I think it's a good analogy of this. When I fly, my body gives me signals that I'm in danger. Somewhere along the way, a flag went down in my body, and I know logically that I'm safe, and I really believe that, but my body will still shake and tell me I'm in danger. What I've worked really hard is to stop the feedback loop, which is when my body says I'm in danger, it then tells my mind it's in danger, and then I'm like, oh my God, what is that in the plane? I've actually been able to control my brain to be safe, but I have to do a lot of things for my body. So
via your nervous
my
system.
nervous system. So
Okay.
what can help people is not the brain to convince you of a narrative in the moment, is even putting your hand on your heart and every day saying, I'm safe and I'm enough. You want to become your own mother. It could be a dad too, but I'm just saying that mother is the self-soothing.
Yeah.
And all those things we know of, shaking our bodies helps our nervous system, humming, deep exhales help our body. You have to regulate to relate. Narratives are really good to expand that, and that can help. But if the nervous system is so activated, it can sabotage your desire to do what you know would be best for you to do. So
Yeah.
I think it's two things. How do we work on our narratives, which is the cognitive part, and how do we also work on our nervous system?
Yeah.
But it would be
Okay.
limited both ways, because there is a feedback loop.
You need both parts.
You need both parts. Our brain tells us we're in danger and it affects our body, but our body tells us we're in danger and affects our brain.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is another way nervous system that's wired in childhood can also be rewired in adulthood with some self-soothing, becoming your own mother or father,
Yeah.
that daily practice of hand on heart and reminding yourself that you're safe or you're enough.
Yes, completely. And this is, you see, really what happens to couples is their raw spot that gets activated in their nervous system often activates the raw spot of their partner. And they
Okay.
get into a vicious loop where each one is activating. So whatever of like, I'm feeling unsafe and I get activated, and then I then react in a certain way that then causes you to activate yours, and they get stuck in that, and it
Okay.
becomes
Stuck poking each other's bruises.
bruises in a way, and both nervous system then gets activated, and then it's really hard to have a good conversation because they're in the back of their brain, which is in the flight and the fight and the freeze. So they have to learn either to co-regulate or learn how to self-soothe, and sometimes to even take some space to get regulated so they can have a different conversation that's more productive.
I mean, that sounds like an incredibly common occurrence.
Yeah.
And not just in romantic relationships, right? But perhaps also in friendships or professional relationships.
Yes. Well, we know this so much when we go back home. Nothing like our siblings or our parents can activate. They are the most have the raw feelings because underneath all of us is a young child, an 8-year-old. And I think we forget that so much with our partners. We see the adult in front of us.
Okay, so we can rewire our nervous system and we can start to tell a different story about ourselves.
Yes, for sure. Different. Yeah.
You talked to Anita about how much your family has shaped the person that you are, very understandably. Are there any parts of your script that you've had to rewrite?
Oh my gosh, so many. I mean, I struggled with years feelings of abandonment because the care was inconsistent. And I did EMDR as well to address this. EMDR I highly recommend, and there's lots of good research on it. And that's a good way to rewire because trauma is lodged beyond the cerebral cortex. So it's not just a thinking thing, it can get lodged in there. And EMDR can kind of heal the brain and kind of go from a somatic place. So my care was inconsistent. And with that, it has made me in not so much with friendships, it gets activated in the couple relationship.
So the fear that they're going to
Yes. If you don't,
abandon you.
yeah. And it's kind of weird. It's like, if you don't see me, will you forget about me? It's almost like
Okay.
I fear that people won't hold me in mind
Mm.
if I'm not seen. Like, will you hold me in mind? Will you consider me? So I used to get, let's say you were late to pick up me at the airport, I have to tease out, is this a pattern of behavior? Because my system might get activated. Like, I'm not prioritized, I'm not important, I'm not held in mind. And that could lead to me doing a variety of different protectors, getting angry, getting emotional, shutting down, or wanting to protect, push somebody away, always to protect from that vulnerability of that little girl, that little kid, baby really, who wasn't always.
Who was left waiting at the school gate or.
Yeah, for me, it was more like in the crib and maybe forgot about.
Yeah.
So I have put a little picture of myself as a baby on my phone in which I talk to that part, and I suggest it for other people. If I talk to the little baby that you were enough, the people are going to hold in your mind. They're just busy now. They're going to come back. I don't need to chase after them. I don't have to remind them that I'm here,
Yeah.
and I can
That's
also,
another great.
I can soothe myself. I can become my own parent. There's a great book by Richard Schwartz that I have recently read, which is about this for couples, and it's called "You Are the One You Were Waiting For." Sorry.
Okay.
He's the head of internal family systems, and he wrote No Bad Parts. But it's all about that. We so much want somebody to come and rescue us without realizing that we are the ones to need to rescue ourselves. We're the ones that can soothe ourselves. We are the ones.
You are the one you've been waiting for. We'll add that in the show notes.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love the idea as well of putting a photo of a younger you on your phone or on your desk as a reminder to where some of those nervous dysregulation might come from. And I think the example about being picked up late from the airport is a really vivid example, because I can easily play that forward and understand how a couple in that dynamic would end up in an argument.
Mm-hmm.
Both parties feel aggrieved before you can recognize that actually this isn't an argument between you and your partner. This is an argument or a fear or a hang up that comes from somewhere else and somebody else.
Yes. I mean, with my ex-husband, who I was with 20 years, two things I did that weren't helpful. I would go to anger sometimes, and then his raw spot is around conflict and criticism. So I would then, and then that made him retreat. And the more he retreated, the more I felt abandoned, the more I got demanding, which is a common thing of the anxious and avoidant dance. Over the years, I can see my role in that. My raw spot triggered his raw spot, and sometimes we worked against each other in that way. Had I been more compassionate to my raw spot, have I been able to voice the fear of abandonment, maybe it would have had a different reaction. We're all on a journey, right? We're all trying to figure it out.
We are.
Yeah.
One day at a time. And you talked about the need to feel safe in therapy. Is there anything that we can learn from how therapists make people feel safe and apply in our daily life?
Yeah. I mean, one thing to think of, therapists are obviously humans too. And there's been times that we get activated. That's the way we have supervision. So there are ways to feel safe. Do you feel like you have a voice? Do you feel listened to? Do you feel like you can talk about things that you find shameful and more vulnerable? But also, ruptures with your therapist are important to work through, just like they are in our relationships. That's one of the problems I have in individual therapy. I think individual therapy is good, but I like that we're, as systemic family therapists, we're holding different voices in the room, even if we're seeing one person. Because I think there's too much this idea of cutting people out or red flags, in dating or.
Yeah, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Where's the line between being boundaried and turning away from a conflict that could be resolved?
I think two things are really important. You have to ask, is this a pattern of behavior? Humans, you got to allow for some human error. Humans are fallible. All relationships will hurt you, let you down, disappoint you, reject you. Like, that's the nature of what we set up. To think that that's never going to happen, you're going to have ruptures, every relationship. People's ability to repair is really important. Their ability to take responsibility, to say sorry, to grow. And that's what you'd want to look at for a therapist. The answer is not to cut off. It's, can the therapist say, hey, I had a bad day, and I'm sorry, I wasn't my best self. This is what I don't like about red flags, because red flags puts all the problem in one person. And there's no dance. We all have toxic traits. We probably all had red flags in certain relationships.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you have relationships where over time you don't feel heard, you feel the person's defenses, at some point, standing up, protecting yourself is to say, hey, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself in relationships in which there's a pattern of behavior that I'm working harder than the other person and there's not reciprocity? Then that's different. That's saying showing up for me means that this relationship is not good for me. So I guess it depends on the situation. It depends on the pattern of behavior. It also we always need to look at what is our part. What was our part in the dance,
And how do people identify what their own role is in a dynamic that might feel stuck?
I think more than anything, when you really get in touch with the vulnerability, what are the parts of you that you're trying not to feel? Because that's what brings up the protectors, which is blame and criticism. Because like, I'm feeling like I'm maybe not good enough. That's really hard to say. Or I'm afraid you're going to leave me. So people find other ways to communicate to avoid talking about their own vulnerability. And yet it's vulnerability that helps us to open each other's ears.
I can imagine how powerful it would be if somebody sat opposite you turned and said, what I'm feeling right now is worried that you're going to leave me.
Yeah.
When it's an argument about whether you picked somebody up late for the airport or something that isn't a sackable offense.
Yes, exactly. But you have to ask yourself, what emotions am I trying to avoid? Half the time when we have a strong reaction, it's about us and not the other person. So what emotions are getting stirred up right now? What emotions am I trying to avoid? Shame, which is not good enough. But what am I afraid of? Fear that you might leave me. So we have a lot of ways in which we're trying to not see those parts or protect us. Yeah.
Yeah. Very relatable and really practical as well. I love that, Anita. Thank you. Yeah, I have one question which I just have to ask.
Okay.
You talked a little bit about the units within your family. As a therapist, when people come into your office, did you see differences between the oldest and youngest siblings?
Oh, for sure. Oh my God.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
Everything in between. Oldest tend to be more rule followers. They tend to side with the parent that's most in power. You see more compliancy with older ones. So parents feel like, oh God, the oldest wasn't that hard because they're more compliant. Where the boundary is, they tend to stand right in front of it. They don't step over it.
Okay.
I think they have more expectations on themselves, so they have more fear of failing.
The
eldest
child.
Yes, they're the parents' hopes and dreams, and there's more expectations. They can also have more trauma in that way too, because if it's young parents, they're
finding
the
their
guinea
way.
pig. They have more fear of failing, wanting it to get it right.
And youngest?
And youngest are the entertainers. They can be more relaxed and more funny, and because they got a lot of feedback for being the youngest and the baby, there's less expectations on them. They tend to think if there's a boundary, I'm going to step over it. My two are very much like this and fit these roles of the oldest and the youngest. I'm also very much a youngest. If you tell me where the boundary is, I want to step over it. Yes, so they tend to want to break the rules. There's more leeway for them to break the rules. They don't get us in trouble as much. They can struggle with feeling less capable at times because they can feel things were done for them more over-functioning. And then the middle kids, it's funny you asked about the oldest and the youngest.
I forgot about all the middle children listening.
Children, because they are considered in a way forgotten, but they are the peacemakers and they know how to be a leader and take leadership. So less rebellious, but also be able to be compliant as well.
And how long do you need to be the youngest sibling to be wired in that way in adulthood? If you're 5, 6, 7 as the youngest sibling and then your parents have another child and you officially move into the middle role, but are you already cast in the
when you're
younger sibling?
There's 6 years between the child. You're considered an only child and the youngest. So 6 years, for some reason, is the magic number. You sort of have tendencies of both the youngest and an only child as well.
So I was born, and then 6.5 years later, my brother came along.
Yes.
So in that regard, I'm as much as of an only child as a elder child.
Yeah. You're a little bit of both, you're not quite an only child and you're not quite a oldest in that way.
Yeah. Well, then it would be remiss of me to ask, what are the tendencies of only children in comparison to siblings' children?
Only children tend to get along with adults. Sometimes they have struggle with their own peer groups. Obviously, these are generalizations, so
Mm,
they tend to be more
that resonates.
parentified or seen as an equal on the same hierarchy as the parents. What you see in family therapy sometimes is only children don't know where the hierarchy is. They sort of position themselves as a little adult, and their parents position them that way. There's less of a hierarchy. And that can also affect not only in the family about their listening to the parents, but it can also play out with teachers or any authority figures.
I'm smiling because when I was younger, my first birthday party was an adult party. And so I think that, yes, I spent a lot of time with adults. And then I just, as you were talking there, could hear one of my former bosses ringing in my ear telling me that I didn't deal with authority and hierarchy very well.
Yeah, well, I think maybe that's how you got positioned as a family, right? You
Yeah.
saw yourself as a little adult in that
Yeah.
hierarchy.
And an equal among
Equal.
equals.
Yeah, so that definitely can happen with only children. We'd go grocery shopping, right? I came home, to function in my family, you had to be a team. There's no way a big
Yeah.
family can function unless people are acting as a team. I don't think only children have to think about that quite as much. And I don't mean it in a bad way, but they're not always thinking about the team or how it's affected. Some people love that position. Some only children felt lonely and wanted more siblings. Some, you can also get all your hopes and dreams are on one child. That can be tricky, but then you're also really seen.
Double-edged.
Double-edged, as many things are, as we know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Anita, I really enjoyed our conversation. There's some lovely color to your childhood, but also some really practical insights for listeners.
Oh, it's been a great conversation. I love talking about family dynamics, so I appreciate the space to be able to talk about this.
Absolute pleasure. It's been really wonderful to have somebody with both your personal and professional experience. So I've been really grateful. And I think that we could have talked for a long time this afternoon.
Definitely. I think definitely so much to cover, right? Yes.
Thank you again for bringing a brilliant guest this afternoon.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Anita for joining me. If you liked this episode, then go and check out my interview with Ruth, where we also talked about breaking generational cycles. And please, if you don't already, like and subscribe. See you next time.